Paw'dcast. I am Kate Jackie
And Jacqueline Babidio.
and today we'll be interviewing Mr. Pistor.
Hello, Mr. Pistor.
Hello, ladies.
How are you?
I'm doing fine today.
So, Mr. Pistor, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
I came to Nanaimo in 1989, and I started my first job as a teacher here at John Barsby, and I've been here ever since. So I'm in my 32nd year teaching here at John Barsby, and I've taught a few math courses along the way, but mostly I've been a biology and chemistry teacher and junior science.
So, what made you decide to teach science over math?
Well, that's an easy one. I just had a natural affinity for biology. Biology was my sort of number one interest, both in high school, and that's what led me to taking a biology degree at the University of Western Ontario in London, Ontario. And I got my undergrad degree, an honors Bachelor of Science, so that's a 4-year degree. And I specialized in physiology and pharmacology. So chemistry always was a big part of biology. So I kind of had the best of both worlds doing that degree. And then I got my teaching degree at the University of Windsor, Ontario. And then I came to Nanaimo, and along the way I picked up a master's degree, Master's of Arts in Leadership and Administration. And I've been at Barsby all that whole time.
What kept you going?
Aside from my favorite foods, well, as a teacher, I'll interpret that as what's kept me going as a teacher, because I have had some tough times along the way, but as much as teaching the same courses over and over again might sound repetitive or boring to some people, we're always teaching different students, and so there's always novelty in how you teach, not so much what you teach. And I think I've always managed to recognize sort of the newness in teaching a different group of kids each year. And that's kept it fresh for me, and I think that's kept me going.
With having different students every semester or term, how do you help students become independent?
That's a good question, because that happens both in a single course from beginning to end, but also in the longer term between grade 8 to grade 12. And I think teachers that teach at multiple grade levels always appreciate the sort of the short game and the long game with that question. So, to begin with, you have to establish a relationship with students where they understand where you're coming from as a teacher, and you have to get to sort of figure out where they're coming from as a student. And not every student has the same goals. They don't all want to get the same things out of the course. Mm-hmm. But teachers do have a responsibility to prepare them all the best we can for any potential future. So we have to give them enough to carry forward if they want to pursue that same subject at a higher level. And we also want to give them enough understanding to, if that's the last time they take that course, they have enough understanding to read a newspaper article on biology or science-related topic, or read a magazine article or a recent finding, and be able to put that into some context that relates to their own life. And so, as students mature through the course and develop, there's that we want to get them understanding the topic so they can bring some understanding forward. And then hopefully over time, we can get them to the grade 12 level where they're ready for university.
Mm-hmm. As a teacher, do you learn something from your students as you teach them?
Yes. I think teachers are learning things from their students all the time. It's those kind of challenges that students present that I think keep teachers motivated to be better teachers. And it could be something, you may have done an experiment 10 times with other groups and it's all gone well, and then one day you get a student and it doesn't make sense to them, and you have to find yet another way to explain to them or show them the concept in a way that makes sense to them. And therein lies the challenge of teaching.
As a science teacher, how could you describe COVID?
Oh, well, I'm going to do the short answer for that one. So COVID, of course, we understand that is a viral infection. And one of the things that we often teach, like in grade 11 when we're learning about viruses, and the jury's kind of out on this, is a virus a living thing or not? So if you go technically by the book, viruses do not have cell structure, and so they're not a living organism. But they do carry DNA or RNA and are capable of infecting living organisms and take advantage of them to do the reproducing for them. And so to understand how viruses work, you have to have that basic understanding that they're not a living thing. They don't hunt you down. So if you're sitting in the room doing your thing, keeping away from everybody, keeping your distance, keeping your mask on, keeping your hands clean, not touching your face, the virus isn't going to hunt you down. You have to come in contact with it. And that's why these protocols that we're being asked to follow, they're very important to reduce that contact with the virus, because they are not living organisms. They're not like an animal that can hunt you and track you down. But if you come in contact with it, they can infect you. And so that's what all these protocols are about, is to reduce our contact with the virus.
So if I stay away, I'll be safe.
Yeah, ultimately, if we wrapped ourselves up in a bubble and stayed away from everybody, we'd be 100% safe. But you can't live life like that either. So we take risks every day, whether it's walking to school and you could get, hit by a bolt of lightning or run over by a car or some accident happen that you weren't counting on. So we take risks all the time. Every time you get in the car and drive, whatever activity, riding a bike, going skiing downhill. But what we have to keep in mind is, how do we minimize those risks so that they're acceptable, they're reasonable? And if we follow the health protocols, we will be minimizing our risks to a point where it's reasonable risk. You can get out and enjoy your day as long as you're following those protocols.
Mm-hmm.
How do you stay so calm? Because if I was a teacher, I wouldn't stay that calm. But you were like calm.
Well, I'm calm because I've been around a while. So I wasn't always the calmest teacher. I can get riled, and I've had students in the early going, they knew how to push my buttons. But teachers learn, too, over time. And so I've learned to stay calm and to project the calmness so that, in an excited state, we don't always learn the best way. And if you can stay calm, sometimes you're more open to learning, more able to learn. If your environment is safe, and if you're not feeling a lot of anxiety, students don't feel threatened by anything. And by threatened, I mean, if they're pretty sure they're not going to be put on the spot or being asked to read out loud or do something that makes them uncomfortable, well, then they're more open to learning, right? The minute their anxiety levels go up, then the learning starts to shut down. So I've learned to try to maintain a calm and safe environment in the classroom so that all students are not too anxious.
Nice. Could you tell us a little bit about the student advisor group?
Yeah, so this year I've kind of reconnected with this idea of student council through what we're calling the youth advisory group. When I first got to Barsby back in 1989, just from my own positive experiences with student council in my high school, I wanted to sort of pass on some of the knowledge that I learned from one of my favorite teachers, Mr. Peter McClarty, back in Sault Ste. Marie, Ontario. And I thought that, I had learned a lot from my experiences, and I wanted to pass those on to students. So for the first 10 or 11 years here at Barsby, I was the student council sponsor. And then as my life changed, as I had kids and other responsibilities and different things happened, and I became department head, so I had to give up something. So I let that go. In fact, I think it was Mr. Letourneau and a couple other people that had taken over student council for a while. And then last year, we were initiating a form of, call it student connectedness, called the house system. And we wanted every student who comes into Barsby to belong to sort of a group, if you will, a cross representation of the whole school. We created these houses that had members from grade 8 through to grade 12. And every student was assigned, and every teacher was assigned into these houses. And we were getting off to a great start, and then COVID hit. And it really interrupted our plans for an active student council. So this year, under COVID, we thought, well, since kids have to stay in their cohorts, let's get some grade representatives and class representatives from each of these cohort groups, and let's do an intermediate or a temporary kind of student council where those class reps and grade reps would speak for their fellow students and have the kind of voice that we were hoping to develop with the house system. So this is, I think of it as a transitional student council structure to what is going to evolve once we're able to reestablish our house system objectives.
Has Barsby changed since you came here?
Yes, Barsby has changed a lot. In some ways, it's changed a lot. In other ways, there are some consistencies over the 30-odd years I've been here. So some of the changes I've seen, we don't have as many bus students as we used to have. So our student population is mostly within walking distance, with a few exceptions to that. But that changes the flavor a bit because the neighborhood and the neighborhood connections are more consistent amongst the whole population. So there's kind of an understanding that is more consistent amongst the group because of that. When we used to have lots of bus students, we'd have influences from other neighborhoods coming in, and sometimes they were at odds with each other, or certain groups of students couldn't stay after school because they had to get a bus home, so they couldn't participate in sports or teams and clubs. And there's a lot of implications when you have lots of bus students. So when they rearranged our catchment area and we reduced the number of students coming in by bus, there was a bit of a calmer atmosphere that started to develop at Barsby. And I think, that's one of the big changes I've seen. One of the consistencies that I like about the Barsby area is both from the students and the parents. There's a certain honesty. If kids screw up or if they skip out on class or they do something they know they shouldn't have done, they're pretty quick to own up to it. They don't try to lie and get out of it. And, I think that's because we've established a safe environment where people could be honest and not be worried about a severe threat. But we do try to hold students accountable and be responsible for their actions. And those are all teaching moments where you get them to recognize that, you may have messed up, but doesn't mean you have to keep doing that. And you want to improve yourself and be responsible to others. When you're late for class, that interrupts the class. When you don't do your homework, that affects other students in the class as well if it slows the learning down. And with time, I see lots of grade 8 students come in here with some habits that aren't ideal for learning. But by the time they get to grade 12, I'm quite proud of most of them, yeah.
Thank you. Do you have any message you want to send to the new learners out there for science?
Well, I think there's one message that's posted on my wall. I think it was a quote that was passed around the school. Somebody laminated a bunch of copies, and of all the things posted on the wall, that one stayed there the longest. And it's kind of that idea that effort is the one true thing that you have to give to any project or any activity that you're involved in. You know, all other things can be supplied. If you need equipment, you can buy that. If you need something, that can be supplied. But the only thing that you really bring to the table as an individual is your effort, how much you're willing to put in. And as long as people are doing their best effort, I think that's the most we can ask of them. And that's what I ask of my students, is put the effort in. And I've never had a student who put the effort in ever fail. So always put your best foot forward. And like we say at Barsby, what's the motto, girls?
Try your best to do the right thing and get better each day.
Thank you. Couldn't have said it better myself.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And here ends episode 3 of our John Barsby podcast. Thanks to Jackie and Ketty for their interview with Mr. Kevin Pistor. Coming up next week is Pierre Plant and Parker Stringer interviewing Coach Vitsa and talking about his philosophy, where he came from, how he got here, and leadership opportunities here at John Barsby Community School. Thanks for stopping in this week, and stay tuned.